Okay, welcome in one and all. I'm now going to be in my review for Saturday night action of the NHL schedule, starting with the early game between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Anaheim Ducks. When I did make my prediction yesterday, the game was already underway, but I did feel that coming into the matchup that the Flyers would have been the better team and would have prevailed. But unfortunately, it was not meant to be. The Ducks got a big win. 7-4 was the final score. Take a look at the scoring summary. In the first, you had Ryan Strome less than a minute into the game, an even strength goal from McTavish. Frank Matarno would then get a power play goal just under 5 minutes to go in that period, assisted by Fowler and McTavish once again. So it was 2-0 for the Ducks heading into the second period. Frank Matarno would then get his second goal of the game just about 7 minutes into the period, an even strength goal from Lacombe and Strome. Adam Henrique would then increase the lead 9.5 minutes into the period. An even strength goal from Jones and Silverberg. Cam Atkinson would finally get the Flyers on the board with about 12 minutes into that period. An even strength goal from Tippett and Cam York. Travis Konechny would then decrease the lead to 4-2, getting the second goal of the game for the Flyers, an even strength goal, and that happened about 40 seconds after Atkinson put the Flyers on the board. On Konechny's goal, Walker and Lawton got the assists. So it was 4-2 for the Ducks heading into the third period. About 2 minutes and 42 seconds into the third, Trevor Zegras would get a power play goal, assisted by Strome, so it's 5-2 at that point. Brett Leeson would then increase the lead about 40 seconds after that. An even strength goal from Carrick and Johnston, 6-2 for the Ducks. Travis Konechny would then cut the lead in half with about 10 minutes into that frame. A power play goal from Couturier and Brink. Frank Matarno would then increase the lead to 7-3. About a minute and 20 seconds after that, a shorthanded goal from Henrique. So it was 7-3 at that point for the Ducks. And then Joel Farabee, with 3 minutes left in that game, would give the Flyers their fourth goal of the game. An even strength goal from Brink and Cates. So 7-4 was the final score from Philadelphia. The next matchup takes place in La Belle Province, Quebec, where we had a team that I bleed blanc and rouge for, and they were playing host to the Winnipeg Jets. I did think that the Jets would be able to pull this one off, and they nearly did. 4-3 was the final score. It took until a shootout to decide a winner. So both these teams were pretty competitive all the way to the end. Adam Lowry would kick things off in the first, but 4.5 minutes into that period. No assists, an even strength goal. Justin Barron would then tie things up about 35 seconds or 37 seconds after that for the Habs. An even strength goal from Pinard and Goalie. So it was 1-1 heading into the second period. Lowry would then get his second goal of the game. Only took 15 seconds into that frame. An even strength goal from Niederreiter and Appleton. And speaking of Niederreiter, he would then increase the lead about 20 seconds after that to 3-1, and Appleton would assist on his goal. Sean Monahan would get a power play goal about 8.5 minutes into that period, assisted by Suzuki and Matheson, and that's where it stood after three. So it's 3-2. That's where it stood after 2 periods of play. Joel Armia would then tie things up about 2 minutes into that period, assisted by Goalie. And obviously, there's no more scoring for the rest of the regulation or overtime. It took until a shootout to decide a winner, where the captain, Nick Suzuki, would prevail and get the game-winning goal. So now, with that, the Montreal Canadiens are now sitting at 5-2-1, and the Winnipeg Jets are sitting at 4-3-1. And I should have mentioned, too, that the previous game, the Ducks, since they won, are sitting at 4-4-0, and the Flyers are sitting at 4-3-1. The next matchup takes place in Florida, where we have the Panthers, who played host to the Seattle Kraken. You should see their logos pop up on the screen right away. So I did predict that Florida would get the victory. It was a narrow victory. 3-2 was the final score. Jared McCann would kick things off in the first, about 8 minutes into that period. Would get an even strength goal from Gordy and Borden. So it was 1-0 for the Kraken heading into the second period. Neely Toivonen would then increase the lead to 2-0, 7.5 minutes into that period. An even strength goal from Schwartz and Borgen. Gustav Forsling would score a power play goal about 1 minute and 20 seconds after that, assisted by Lundell and Verhaeghe, and then Matthew Tkachuk would tie things up, I want to say 11 seconds after that, an even strength goal from Kulikov and Mikkola. So it was all tied up at 2, heading into the third. About just under 6 minutes left to go in that period. Nick Cousins would get the go-ahead goal and eventual game-winning goal, an even strength goal from Mahura and Kulikov. So 3-2 was the final score. The Panthers are now sitting at 4-3-0, while the Seattle Kraken are sitting at 2-5-2. The next matchup takes place in Massachusetts, where we have the Boston Bruins, and they're played host to the original 6 foe in the Detroit Red Wings. I did think that Detroit would be able to pull this one off, but unfortunately it was not meant to be. 4-1 was the score in favor of the Bruins. Taking a look at the scoring summary here. So in the first, Pavel Zacha would kick things off in the first, but 10.5 minutes into that frame, a power play goal from Marchand and Pasternak. Charlie McAvoy would then score about 3 minutes after that, an even strength goal, no assists on his score. So it was 2-0 for the Bruins heading into the second, where there wasn't any scoring in the second, so it still remained 2-0 after 2. In the third period, Joe Veleno would cut the deficit to 2-1, 6 minutes and 40 seconds into that period, assisted by Sprong. David Pasternak would then increase the lead to 3-1, just under 9 minutes left to go in the game. No assists on his goal. And then he would get a second goal of the game. Again, no assists on his goals. Just over 2.5 minutes, or just under 2.5 minutes to play in that game. So 4-1 is the final from Boston. The Bruins are now sitting at 7-0-1, while the Detroit Red Wings are sitting at 5-3-1. The next matchup takes place in Ohio, where we have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who played host to the New York Islanders. And should see their logos right there. I did predict the Islanders would get the victory, and they did. A low-scoring affair, to say the least. 2-0 was the final score. Kyle Palmieri would kick things off, just under 5 minutes left in that first period. Had an even strength goal from Engvall and Aho, so it was 1-0 after 1. There were no goals scored in that second period, so it was still 1-0 heading into the third period. And I want to say just over 3 minutes to go. Matt Martin would increase the lead to 2-0, assisted by Cizikas. So 2-0 was the final score from Columbus. The Blue Jackets are now sitting at 3-3-2, while the New York Islanders have improved to 4-2-1 so far on the season. The next matchup takes place in Tennessee, Music City, where we have the Nashville Predators, and they played host to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I did predict that Nashville would get the victory. It took until overtime to decide a winner, but they did prevail in the end. 3-2 was the final score. William Nylander would kick things off in the first with a power play goal, just under 7 minutes to go in that frame, assisted by Matthews and Marner. Ryan O'Reilly, the former Leaf, would score a power play goal himself about 1.5 minutes after that, assisted by Yossi and Forsberg. So it was all tied up at 1, heading into the second. Mark Giordano would then give the Leafs a 2-1 lead with just under 8 minutes to go in that frame, assisted by Kampf. Ryan O'Reilly would get his second goal and second power play goal of the game, tie things up at 2, just under 5 minutes left in that second period, assisted by Forsberg and Evangelista. There were no goals scored in the third, so it was still tied up heading into overtime. And just over 2 minutes into the frame, the captain, Ryan Yossi, would give the, obviously, game-winning goal, assisted by Evangelista and Novak. So 3-2 was the final score from Nashville. They have now evened their record up 4-4-0, and the Leafs are now sitting at 5-2-1. The next matchup takes place in Pennsylvania, where we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they played host to the Ottawa Senators. I did think that the Pittsburgh would be able to prevail and get a victory, but unfortunately the season has not gone as planned for the team thus far. 5-2 in favor of the Senators in this matchup. So take a look at the goal scoring summary. Ridley Gregg would kick things off with a power play goal just over 4 minutes into that first, assisted by Giroux and Chichurkin. Brady Tkachuk would score with less than 6 minutes to go, and even strength goal from Giroux and Stützle. So it's 2-0 in favor of Ottawa after the first period. Dominik Kubalik would increase the lead to 3-0, just about 5.5 minutes into that period, assisted by Gregg and Joseph. Sidney Crosby would get the Penguins on the board, cutting the deficit to 3-1, and even strength goal from Rust and Letang with about 2.5 minutes left in that second period. So it was 3-1 heading into the third and final frame. Brady Tkachuk would get his second goal of the game with just under 7 minutes to go in that period. An even strength goal from Stützle and Hamonic. Drake Batherson would then increase the lead about 31 seconds after that. An even strength goal from Tarasenko, making it 5-1. Jake Gensel would then score with just over 30 seconds to go in the game, but it was kind of meaningless at that point. An even strength goal from Crosby and Rudwell. So, with that victory, the Sens have now pulled back to 500. They are sitting at 4-4-0. And the Penguins, who I mentioned at this beginning, are struggling. After 8 games, they are sitting at 3-5-0. The next matchup takes place north of the border in British Columbia, where we have the Vancouver Canucks, and they played host to the New York Rangers. So you should see the logos right on the screen. We'll take a look and see who won and the goal scoring summary. So in this matchup, I feel like Vancouver has burned me almost every pick. I picked them to lose, they win. I picked them to win, they lose. And obviously in this case, I picked them to win, they fell short. They did get a point. It did take overtime to decide a winner, but they eventually did fall 4-3 to the New York Rangers. Artemi Panarin would kick things off in the first, just over 10 minutes to go. A power play goal from Trocheck and Zibanejad, so it's 1-0 for the Rangers heading into the second period. JT Miller would then get the Canucks on the board with just over 4 minutes to go. In the second, a power play goal for the Canucks, assisted by Hronek Pedersen. So it was all tied up at 1 after 2. In the third, Tyler Myers would get a shorthanded goal. And it's very scarce to have a defenseman get a shorthanded goal, but he did. Just over 9 minutes into that period, 2-1 at that point. Adam Fox would then tie things up just over 3 minutes after that. A power play goal from Panarin and Zibanejad. Speaking of Zibanejad, he would then score about 1 minute and 3 seconds after that, again on the power play, assisted by Fox. So it was then 3-2 in favor of the Rangers. And then Carson Soucy would then score roughly 22 minutes and almost 20 seconds after Zibanejad increased or gave the Rangers a lead. Soucy would then tie things up, an even strength goal from Hronek and Beauvillier. So it was obviously tied up heading into overtime. And then just over a minute to go in overtime, Keandre Miller would then get the game-winning goal, assisted by Kreider, an even strength goal for the Rangers. So the Rangers have now improved to 6-2-0, and the Vancouver Canucks are at 5-2-1 so far. And the last game on tap for Saturday took place in Los Angeles, where we have the Kings, who played host to, by far one of the better teams in the league, and the Vegas Golden Knights. So I did predict that Vegas would get the victory, and it took until a shootout, so it honestly could have gone the other way. But Vegas did end up prevailing with victorious 4-3 was the final score. Alex Lafayette would kick things off for the Kings in the first, just under 7 minutes to go in that frame, and even strength goal from Dubois and Roy. So it was 1-0 after 1. Trevor Lewis would then increase the lead to 2-0, just under 5 minutes into that frame, an even strength goal from Anderson and Lizotte. Michael Amadio would then score roughly just under 3 minutes after that, an even strength goal from Carlson. And William Carrier would then tie things up with, I want to say, just over 7 minutes to go in that period. No assists on his goal. So it was all tied up at 2 heading into the third. Mark Stone would give the Vegas Golden Knights their first lead of the game. Just over 6 minutes left in that third. A power play goal from Marchessault and Theodore. And Drew Doughty, with just over a minute to go in the frame, would tie things up. An even strength goal from Fiala and Kempe. So there were no goals in overtime. It took until a shootout to decide a winner, where Jack Eichel would come through in the clutch to give the Vegas Golden Knights a big win over a team from the Pacific. So with that win, the Vegas Golden Knights are now sitting at 8-0-1. And with the overtime / shootout loss, the Los Angeles Kings are now sitting at 4-2-2. So I'll quickly take a little, make a little review of who I picked and who actually won. So I was 0-1 with the Ducks and Phillies. I was 0-2 when I picked Winnipeg over Montreal. I was 1-2 when I picked Florida over Seattle. I was 1-3 when I thought Detroit was going to win. 2-3 with the New York Islanders win, and 3-3 with Nashville defeating Toronto. 3-4 when I picked Pittsburgh, but Ottawa ended up winning, so 3-4. And then I got burned again with Vancouver, sitting at 3-5. The Rangers obviously won, and then the Vegas defeating the Kings. So I finished with 4 wins and 5 losses. So right now, my overall record on the season is 68-57. So I'm still above 500, but it's not looking too pretty. So 68-57. As always, if you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative at the same time. And as always, take care.